Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kev Baker, and it's the right time, the right place for today's Kev Baker Show. And it is going to be another brilliant show. You're probably fed up hearing me saying that, but we continue to raise the bar right here on KBS and TFR at tfrlive.com. Remember, tell all of your friends, your family, your colleagues, annoy people with tfrlive.com until they tune in and they can see what all the fuss is about, because this is where silence is consent. And like I always like to say, there is no shutting me up. There's no shutting up any of the other hosts. There's no censorship on here. And that's why we all love coming back together day after day, night after night to tune in to find out just what I'm going to get into here. And I've got a couple of guests here tonight. One, not so much a guest. I've got Scotty Lopez here with me. And Scotty, it's great to have you during the week on the KBS show. Great to have you here, man. And you were, without giving too much away, you were messaging me yesterday, and the subject matter, well, it fell right into what we're going to be talking about tonight. So before we get into all of that, dude, how you doing? And it's great to see you, Scott. I can see you on cam. You're not an AI bot. All of these rumours about you just being an avatar, I've dispelled them all. How you doing, brother?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. And yes, I am not a Russian bot. I am not just a AI-generated picture profile. So
you're not that dude in the Matrix picture that we see every week. No, that's not really you. We're here. We've got you live. And, of course, people, you can see this on YouTube. If you're listening live right now, it'll be on YouTube by tomorrow. But it's great to see you, and loving the fact we've added this visual element to things. But tonight, it's going to be really good, Scott, because this is some of the good stuff we usually like to get into on a Freaky Friday.
Yeah, I mean, this is crazy, and it's very interesting that this all went down right before you were going to do a show basically on this. And
isn't that the way it works here, Scott? You know, like that document we found as well, it kind of coincided with the stuff we'd been talking about. Synchronicity at work here on TFR, and that's what it's all about. And I didn't even realize there was such a thing to look out for, like synchronicities, until I started listening to Chris and Cherie Geo, of course, who are the great people behind this network. And talking of the network, before we get going tonight, if you would like to support the network, there's multiple ways you can do that. You can subscribe to your favourite show on here. That sees the network and the host actually splitting the subscription. Or you can head on over to ialife.com. That's ialife.com, where you can get TFR's very own CBD oil. Now, CBD really it's a revolution that's going on right now. It's spreading around the world. And this is 99% pure CBD hemp oil. But not only that, it is infused with the spirit of Aya. Now, I was speaking to Chris today. He didn't give me any special coupon codes or anything like that. But if you do make an order, and I urge you to do so, let him know that you heard it here on the Kev Baker Show. And, of course, you'll be going a long way to not only helping yourself, but supporting the network as well. So with that out of the way, let us get into tonight's information, because, like I say, it's going to be a really, really good one. And I'm joined by a returning guest and somebody who has been on Clyde Lewis's show, Ground Zero, quite often. Always enjoy listening to tonight's guest when he's on there. And his name is Ryan Gable. He's a veteran radio personality and producer for the show, The Secret Teachings. Now, his broadcast focuses on the aforementioned synchronicity. It's the synchronicity of alternative news, health, history, philosophy, the paranormal, symbolism, the occult, esoteric, alchemy, magic with a K, as we speak about a lot on this show, and more, in the most distinct ways by finding parallels and patterns often overlooked. Now, spending much of his life on air, and having written several books, Ryan has also been a guest on dozens of other radio shows, and his broadcast aired on a variety of networks from WPRK to CBS to Dark Matter, LNM, and the Fringe FM. Now, he's also a frequent guest on Coast to Coast, Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis. Clyde will probably boot my bum for that one later. And however, his broadcast has also been specially specifically removed from various networks over the years and banned from attending conferences for speaking on subjects considered too controversial or for exposing con artists within the industry, something myself and Scott have been doing quite a lot of recently as well. And Ryan and the Secret Teachings are not aligned with any specific ideology, so that they may stay fluid with information as it is unveiled. He holds himself to the same standard and recommendations suggested on air or in his writings in relation to food or study. He focuses on critical thinking and objectivity as keys to understanding, utilising and appreciating the secret teachings of all ages. And he's here with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back, Ryan Gable. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Kev, I'm doing great. Hey there, Scott. I'm really excited to be back on KBS.
Oh, we are absolutely stoked to have you here, dude, because for me, you really are doing a lot of great work. You do that much work, it's actually hard to keep up with all of what you're doing. And I see me and you in a very similar kind of niche. We go here, there, and everywhere, Ryan. And like you, I like to look for those patterns as well. I think Clyde Lewis probably taught us both that you need to really look for these connections, these synchronicities that sometimes we don't pay attention to, but in fact they're the most important part of most of the stories in which we cover. But before we get going tonight, you've got a number of books out there, so let the audience know about your books, and then we've got some really good topics to get into, man.
Yeah, thanks, Kev. So my books are called Occult Arcana. That's a massive 400 and something page grimoire on history, mythology, philosophy, and what some call the secret teachings. I have another book called Food Philosophy. It's a little bit smaller. It's about the food industry. It also goes into the climate change scam of carbon taxes and things of that nature, an anti-human agenda, if you will. And my newest book is called The Technological Elixir. The subtitle is Black Goo, Transhumanism and Invoking Artificial Intelligence. And they're all available on my website at www.thesecretteachings.info. And it's really interesting, Kev, that people like yourself and people like Clyde Lewis, when I was growing up in the world of radio, when I first got introduced to these types of topics, I was trying to find connections between things because I felt like intuitively there were connections between certain things that other people would talk about separately but wouldn't put together and look at the overall bigger picture. And when I started listening to people like Clyde Lewis, and I found out about people like you, Kev, I realized that there are some other people in the radio world who are doing the same kind of thing. And regardless if we have a relationship with those people, I mean, I've gotten to know you better, Kev. I've gotten to know Clyde very, very well, having met Clyde several times in person. And we've all been doing things separately and finding the same connections. And then when we come together, we can put those connections together. We can offer different perspectives. It's not just you. It's not just Clyde. It's not just me. Anybody, all of us. I have listeners send me things all of the time. We look at things that are seemingly separated, but when we put them together, it gives us a better understanding of what's going on. And I think that we can do a lot of that tonight on the subject of mysterious booms and the Earth's magnetic field shifting and things like maybe even colored snow and some of the other things you mentioned in your promo, Kev.
Absolutely, because, I think it was the last time we were on air. Unbeknown to us, we had hit a couple of subjects. I can't remember specifically what they were, but I think we both shared a message on Facebook later on that night or the next day, because it turned out that Clyde Lewis, totally independent of what we were doing, was on the same kind of path. He'd been picking up on the same kind of topics, the same kind of connections. And, sometimes there are shows out there, they're very specific. They keep the blinkers on, as I like to say. And there's nothing wrong with that, because they're absolute experts at their own subject. However, when you become so kind of examine the one topic so deeply, it can be hard, A, to find time to look at other stuff, and B, to see those bigger connections. So I think we all play a role, the shows that are very specific, and then shows like me, shows like you. You've got Coast to Coast, which is it's kind of light these days, but definitely Ground Zero, Clyde Lewis. We try to thread that kind of all the stories together. We try to find the commonalities in there. And that's why I really enjoy working with yourself, Ryan, and Clyde. And tonight's topics, absolutely brilliant and so current as well, because we're going to be talking about mystery booms. And it feels like we've been talking about mystery booms for years, and we'll get into the history of that in just a moment with Ryan. But this is where Scott comes into the equation, because Scott didn't know I was going to be doing this show with Ryan today. And he said to me yesterday, you know, Kev, I've just heard 2 more of these noises, these mystery booms. So, Scott, I'm going to bring you in here at this point before we get the historicals on the booms. Talk to us about what it was you heard and what it was like to witness this.
It was crazy. I was in the kitchen speaking with my mom and my brother, and we were sitting there and we're just waiting for this big snowstorm to come in. And it was still probably another hour or 2 away before the snow even arrived. So it wasn't even doing anything. I mean, it was cloudy. But we heard another mystery boom. You know, it was like this rumbling sound. And, you know, it's not like a big, like, crack of thunder, like if a lightning bolt hit the ground or something like that. It's kind of like that more soft kind of rumble you hear when there's like lightning within the clouds, you know, when you hear it like up above you. That's exactly what it sounded like. And it happened twice within a 30-minate period. So,
and you were looking at the weather conditions and things like that, and there was nothing that would suggest to you that there was any thunder or lightning in the sky.
No, I immediately went and I looked at the radar because I thought, okay, maybe we're hearing like some thunder snow or something like that. And I looked at the radar and there was like nothing even around us at the time, really. And there was, I mean, you could see some of the snow on the radar, you know, coming towards our area, but none of the radar signatures were strong enough, like, to indicate that there would be any thunder or lightning being generated out of any of it. So it was definitely really bizarre. It was really weird. And like I said, everybody heard it. Everybody in the house heard it. I mean, obviously, you know, me, my mom, and my brother heard it because we were all sitting right there, and we all just kind of stopped and we're like, was that thunder? You know? And then, you know, when I came back here, I came into the room to check the radar and look at everything. And then it happened again, like as I was looking, you know, so like I said, it was all within a 30-minute period. And then that was all we heard. And I was figuring, okay, well, maybe if the snowstorm moves in, we'll probably hear more of it. You know, you would think, okay, then you would start hearing more like thunder snow or something like that. Never heard it again. Never heard it during the snowstorm or anything like that. So was really bizarre.
So then let me come to you then, Ryan, because like I say, these mystery booms, certainly nothing new. And I think you were taking us back to around the time of 2012 when these were first starting to be reported. What's led us to where we are today, Ryan?
Well, back around 2011, February 10th is one of the earlier cases I have. It's out of Ohio and Indiana. I had printed that article at the time when I first was getting into radio, so that was about 7-8 years ago. And I remember one evening I was sitting in my apartment. I lived in Orlando, Florida at the time, and I had a friend who lived just east of Orlando. She lived over in Christmas, Florida, right near Titusville where Kennedy Space Center is. And she called me up and she said, "Did you hear that loud noise?" And I said, "No, I didn't hear anything." I said, What happened?" And she said, "Well, I felt like my whole trailer lifted off the ground and smashed back down. Everything was rattling." And I said, "Well, what do you think it was?" And she said, "I have no idea. It sounded like it came from underground. It sounded like it came from above. It sounded like it came from all around." And that was the first time that I had ever heard something like that, other than printing out a few of these news stories that I had just maybe breezed through on the radio, just mentioned it and not thought much more about it. And that really, for me, was the first and the last time I had done any research into the subject for many years, until about 2017. I pulled a couple of news stories, and I started to recognize that I had compiled quite a bit of these booms over the years, not recognizing at the time that there were so many of them. Last year, I had my own experience with a mysterious boom, which prompted me to gather up all of these details and do a little bit more investigation. That included going to the USGS. I was in Boise, Idaho at the time. I went to Boise State University. I went to the local news stations, the local newspaper. I went to the Boise Police Department. I went everywhere that an investigator should go. And I contacted all of these people. Most of the responses that I received was that the Boise Police Department had no reports of a boom. I had the Boise State University tell me there were no readings on their seismographs. I had the USGS tell me the exact same thing. And so as this story unfolded, I went to the library one day and I made sure I had a copy of every single article that I could find on the internet. I printed out, there must be 50 of them here or more. I printed all these stories out and I started putting them in an Excel sheet. And so I wanted to reference them and I wanted to see how far this went back to 2011, maybe even before that. And then a lot of frequent and consistent booms, as Scott was saying, some that are being reported in increasing numbers now in 2019. We heard a lot in 2018. And these are coming not just in an isolated area. This is what I think is very important. It's not an isolated area. You can look at it, and you should look at it, as being the result perhaps of a sonic boom from a military installation. When I put together my Excel document, I looked at every single case, and if there was a military base nearby. The only problem with that is, in a lot of these cases, the military says, yes, we were doing testing, but here's the times when we did the testing, and they don't line up when the booms were heard. Now, maybe the military is lying. I personally don't think that in this case. In other cases, the military outright says, no, we didn't do any of this testing. A lot of these booms are heard in the middle of the night or in the early morning hours. So when you look at all of this combined together, we've had very, very few mainstream news reports that have also looked at this combined together. One of them came back in 2017, and it was about how 64 of these mysterious booms had been heard all over the world, Kev, not just in the United States. And NASA says they don't even know what these mysterious booms are. And then I had another article from Newsweek. That was November 24th, 2017. Mystery booms are being recorded across the country and no one can explain why. So as I put all of this together, I started to note that as I read the stories and read what the witnesses had said, everybody is reporting the exact same thing, just like Scott did. It sounds more of like a thud than an explosion. When I heard mine, it kind of threw me out of the beginning stages of sleep. And it sounded like it was an explosion, but it wasn't an explosion. I've heard explosions before. And it sounded like it came from way off in the distance, but it also sounded like it came from right up close. It sounded like it came from above, below, and all around at the same time. My entire apartment was physically shaking. And I had my microphone on an arm. It's in my studio. That's where I was sleeping. My microphone was shaking. The window was rattling. This is the exact same explanation that every single person, bar one or two, has given when they have heard and they have felt these mysterious booms. And in almost every single case, with the exception of a few that have just been reported in the last couple of days in Tucson, Arizona, which experienced some in the past, none of these things are showing up on a seismograph. The USGS has no record of this. Local universities have no record of this. Other reporters and journalists have went out and asked these types of questions like I did. And I didn't even know other people were investigating this when I went to ask those questions. I was just curious. No record of it on the USGS, no record of it at local universities. I went and interviewed 12 people, Kev, in Boise, Idaho. And 11 of those 12 people told me, now that you mention it, I did hear that. And they went on to explain exactly what every other person explained to me, exactly what I felt and exactly what Scott felt, exactly what other people are feeling all over the world. It doesn't matter if it's near a military installation or if it's isolated. It doesn't matter if it's the middle of the day or the middle of the night. It's the same exact thing, a loud boom, a loud thud. It's mysterious. Nobody can explain why. Law enforcement can't explain why. The military can't explain why. And if you really break it down, you can isolate these cases and say, okay, that was a car backfiring. Okay, that was, in one case, Kev, the police said it was a birthday party that got too loud, that rocked homes across the county. The explanations are absurd in some cases. And then sometimes they joke around and they say, oh, maybe it was a UFO. So they kind of write it off. But if you put all of this together, it's very clear that there's something a lot more powerful and a lot more mysterious going on here. And that's kind of led me to conclude that there are people, there have to be people, if people like you, Kev, people like you, Scott, people like myself, if we can figure this out, if we can connect these dots, even in mainstream news, some scientist somewhere, some government agency is very aware of this, and they're not saying anything because there's some conspiracy to conceal it. I don't necessarily think that. Or they're not saying anything because, kind of like DNA, they don't understand DNA, so they call it junk, parts of DNA. They don't understand what's happening. It's more powerful. It goes beyond their explanation and their expertise, so they'd rather dismiss it than address it. And I think it's probably a combination of all of that that has led us to the question of what are the mysterious booms.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous to think that there won't be some agency, multiple agencies, multiple governments that will be very interested in finding out what's going on here. And like you say there, I honestly don't think they have a clue. And this is something that is definitely global. I remember seeing the first ones I remember were over in Eastern Europe. Now, as opposed to the booms, this was when we were talking about the mystery sounds, or the sky trumpets, as they were sometimes described as well. And we've got this booms, the booming sounds that happen. They seem to be more and more common, especially nowadays. And then a few years ago, it was almost like there was a screeching, a scraping. It sounded metallic at times. Some people were trying to figure out whether it was coming from underground, even though the noise sounded like it was all around them. And because of all these different events happening, the ones we know about, and the ones that we don't know about, because there's Scott's one, I don't think that's been reported anywhere yet. So I would imagine this is even more widespread than we appreciate. And it's already bad when you look at the recorded incidents that have occurred. Are we any closer to finding out what is actually causing this? I don't think so, but I think we have to take into account the magnetic field around the planet at this time, because we keep on being told how erratic it is. We see from some of the satellites, it looks like spaghetti junction instead of that nice torus shape that should be going around the planet that we're used to seeing. So I wonder, and again, this is just pure speculation, guys, and I'll come to you first, Scotty, and we'll finish the segment here with Ryan. But I speculate maybe, and I don't even know how to describe this, maybe the slapping together of these magnetic lines of force, something to do with them coming apart. Do you think that may have something to do with it, Scott?
It's possible. I mean, I don't know.
We're in the land of speculation here for sure.
Yeah, we definitely are. And, I also got to mention, this isn't the first time I've heard the mystery booms here. As you know, I've talked about it before, and they've really picked up. I've never heard them before until like the last 1 or 2 years. And I think I've heard it about 3 or 4 times, and it's really weird. And another thing I think I've heard too is the hum.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's been this report of like a low frequency hum. It almost sounds like, when somebody drives by and they got like a sound system in their car and they're like hitting bass really hard and on their speakers. It's kind of like that, but it's just really, really low frequency hum. And I've heard it before. And, some people said, well, they're doing work on the highway out there and they're like, no, I don't think it's that. It's really weird. And I noticed that like a lot of these mystery sounds are occurring in the middle of the country. It seems like in the Midwest, you have a lot of reports of it going on. And I just don't know what it is,
Well, it's important to kind of note here, and I'll get Ryan in just before the break. Scott he's like my resident weather expert, Ryan. So he's somebody that watches the sky. He knows what normal thunder's like. He knows what lightning's like. He knows a lot of the kind of phenomenon that even we would be kind of not too clued up on. So for him to be telling us that this is something out of the ordinary, that adds to this for me. It really, really does.
I also heard that screeching sound when I heard the boom in Boise, Idaho. As I woke up, I heard about 2, 3, maybe 4 seconds of that screeching sound. That is really, really disturbing. That's almost more disturbing than the booms.
Yeah.
And what you're saying about Scott, and Scott, what you know about weather, it's interesting that no official or unofficial reports are really being filed in the sense of providing an explanation for what this actually is. There's no agency. It's not like the Weather Channel says, oh, well, we figured it out, and then other people dispute it. It's not like the military said, oh, we figured it out, and then other people dispute it. There is absolutely zero official explanation given, with the exception of a few unofficial explanations given by individual police officers in counties all over the country.
Okay, guys, we're going to be back after these short messages. Don't go anywhere, because this is just starting to get really, really interesting. Mystery booms amidst a bird box apocalypse. That's what we're talking about right here on the Kev Baker Show tonight. Join us after the break for more with Scott Lopez and our special guest, Ryan Gable from thesecretteachings.info.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Ryan Gable is here live on the Kev Baker Show with us today, and we are talking about the mystery booms. Just what's going on? Are these the noises, the sounds of the apocalypse? Something big happening with the planet right now? Well, that's what we're really trying to dive into to find out. Can't promise that we'll bring you any definitive answers by the end of this show, but I think the more and more people that are aware of this, and the more we talk about it, discuss it, and share these various experiences that people are having, hopefully we'll come to some kind of conclusion as to what they are. But it's not just the noises alone. You know, this is one piece of the puzzle. And Ryan, you brought up something absolutely brilliant during the break that I tend to agree with you. I think it all ties together. And we need to go back a couple of years to when I remember a story of airports, or a airport in Florida, that was literally having to change the number of the runways. And that's because when the planes were coming into land, obviously they're in contact with air traffic control. They're told to head for runway XYZ. But because of the navigation systems and something to do with the GPS, the compass, you know, the magnetic north, they were actually lining up for the wrong runways. Now, it might seem a stretch to say that the mystery booms, the mystery noises, and that kind of thing are connected. But what would you say to that, Ryan? Because I think you're like me. I think you think this is all the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think so. I think that what we're dealing with here is a series of unconnected dots. And if we connect those dots, then the world seems to make a little bit more sense when we have a look at all of this in context. Last year, I went to a conference and I flew across part of the country. I went from Boise, Idaho to San Francisco to Palm Springs. And in that process, I found that my plane was delayed multiple times on the way back, multiple delays, to the point where my plane was actually, after we boarded it, we were kicked off the plane and the flight was canceled. I talked to several people at that specific conference coming from all over the country, and they all had a very similar experience with delayed flights. Now, the airline told me directly, they said, "Sir, the issue here is that we have a weather problem. We can't fly into, for example, San Francisco Airport. There's too much fog. No plane can go in or out right now." Meanwhile, as they tell me that, there are people flying in and out of San Francisco. Now, maybe that's just an issue in how they explained it to me, but it got a little bit more interesting. The flight, when I took a flight coming back, I was in Palm Springs. I was coming back to Boise, Idaho. We had to go through San Francisco. They told us when we got on the plane that San Francisco was only partly open. They had one runway in and one runway out. And I realized, wait a minute, that's the exact same thing I heard about in all of these other stories about runways being changed because the northern magnetic pole is shifting rapidly. I'm from Tampa, Florida, St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay, and I remember that story. That was back in 2011. The Tampa Bay International Airport closed, and the runway, the main runway, had to be renumbered due to the extreme movement of the magnetic North Pole. That also happened to the Tampa Bay Peter O. Knight Airport as well. And so when I started to look into this, I found that a lot of airports, they don't close down entirely, but they'll close down some of the runways to renumber them, and they'll do it that way so they don't have to shut down all air traffic at that time. And I found these stories from Tampa Bay, Florida, to Las Vegas, to Oakland, very close to San Francisco. And I found that these reports of the magnetic poles having some type of interference with airports, another case in Wichita, Kansas, they had to renumber their runways. It's very similar to the mysterious booms. And before break, we were talking about how Scott's experience was not documented in the local news, at least nothing that you guys saw, nothing that I saw. My story in Boise, Idaho was likewise not documented in the local news, despite taking information down to the local newspaper. And so a lot of these cases are not being reported, or if they are, they're not being turned into local or national news stories. And so in that case, we can recognize that we have so many more reports of this, they're just not making the news. So what we see that we have documented is only a small slither of what's actually happening. I think it's the same case with the airports being renumbered. It's only a small case that make it into the news, into articles like I have here, one from the a business journal in Chicago. I have one from Fox News, one from a Las Vegas Review Journal, one from Wired Magazine, and one from Popular Mechanics, and a few others. There aren't many reports of this, although this is happening all the time.
And I've got one here from the 7th of January, and this is from the International Airport Review.com, and it says airports having to rename their runways due to changes in the Earth's magnetic field. Airports this is this year. Airports worldwide have to change their numbers of their runways as magnetic north moves about 60 kilometers a year. And I'll drop that for you, Ryan, in the chat here, and Scott, and I'll drop it for everyone else in the chat room over at tfrlive.com/chat. So yes, I mean, imagine how actually frequent this is happening, guys, but we're not even getting to hear about it, Ryan.
Yeah, we're not hearing the stories, and if we are hearing them, they're not making national headlines. They're local stories, and they get buried in the news. I don't necessarily think that's intentional. There's just no money to be made by promoting a story like this and by making it a national news story. I remember that I read a story back at the beginning of January, and this is a really, really mainstream science, mainstream media report. This is out of Nature magazine. Can't really find a much more mainstream source, where they talked about how the Earth's, this is the headline, Earth's magnetic field is acting up and geologists don't know why. And they go on to talk about that since the 1990s, the northern magnetic pole has moved from 9 miles per year to 34 miles per year, its current speed, and it is rapidly advancing towards Siberia, that same Siberia where they had the black snow you reported on. That's also been reported, orange, blue, red, and various other colors like yellow, no joke, no pun, yellow snow being reported all over Eastern Europe and most of Russia. They say it's just pollution. I don't think it's just pollution. If it was, we'd find it in other places like China, New York City, that are extremely polluted. And when you connect all of that together, you start to see that the Earth's magnetic field is acting up. Geologists say they don't know why. There are numerous reports about that. We have other reports of the Earth's rotation slowing down. I have a story here I just pulled up from Forbes back in November of 2017. The headline, Earth's rotation is slowing down. And they go on to talk about how this might lead to more earthquakes. So we know that solar activity, Kev and Scott, can lead to earthquakes, volcanoes. The sun can affect our emotions. The sun can affect our communications. It can affect the current power grid. It can affect navigation. When you look at all of this together under the power of the sun, I think, probably plays a very, very direct role in the shifting of the magnetic poles. We know that for sure. And I think that probably has some type of an effect on these mysterious sounds, or it is the base for these mysterious sounds. It's the cause, in part, for these mysterious sounds that I think personally, I don't know what you guys think, I think it has to do with some type of geological movement, like a tectonic plate, but something going on underground that is leading to these types of mysterious booms. The screeching sound might be a result of that too, or it might be something different. Whatever we're dealing with here, though, it's widespread. It's all over the world. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I like that, the kind of tectonic plates. And I'll come to you, Scott, because, I think there are big geological kind of shifts happening right now. The North Pole, that's indicative of that, our magnetic fields. And much like when we have these earthquake lights, the piezoelectricity, they produce the rainbow colors way up in the sky. I mean, that to me suggests it is possible that some kind of noise produced at that level of depth below ground could manifest as if it's all around us, even coming from above us as well.
Yeah, and, I've even speculated before in the past, and, I've said it here on the show before and on Freaky Friday, that, maybe we're looking at some kind of a phenomenon with, piezoelectric discharges coming from the ground, and it's creating some sort of noise. The screeching sound, though, I don't know. It's, who knows what's causing that, but
it's almost like the iron core. of the planet is scraping against that. And I know that's ridiculous to say that, but it's that metallic noise.
It sounds like the hull of a ship creaking or a trumpet.
Yeah, the sky trumpets, absolutely. And, you mentioned there the planet slowing down. That's very important as well. And I wonder if this has got anything to do with... We've been talking a lot lately, Ryan, about the fact that people are just out of balance. Things aren't right. Time speeding up more than even people usually say it is. If our planet is...
I'm sorry to jump in here. Sorry, I got to jump in here. But my mom today literally said, it seems like time is going a lot faster. Like it was like freaking her out almost. Like she's like, she's like, it just seems like everything is going a lot quicker, like more than normal. And I just found that really interesting.
You see, that's the thing, Scott.
I had to bring that up.
No, that's the thing, and I'll come to you, Ryan, because obviously when you get older, you always hear people saying, "Oh, time speeds up" and things like that. But like Scott's mum there, it's almost it's like an exponential curve now, the way that time is going. I don't know if you've picked up on this, Ryan, but I think all of these things are connected as well. We're electromagnetic beings, after all. And if the electromagnetics of the planet that we're living on are kind of out of whack, then it stands to reason that we're going to be feeling that as well. We're going to pick up on that.
But we feel that when the weather changes, when the pressure changes, if there's a shift in the electromagnetic field, we feel that. We can feel maybe more depressed because of that. But then there are also artificial means by which to induce that, whether that's with some type of sonic weapon, some type of microwave weapon, the ones that are used for crowd dispersal, or ones that might have been used in the case of the U.S. Embassy in Cuba with the American or the U.S. and the Canadian diplomats, also happened in Moscow back in the 50s. So those things can be weaponized. And perhaps what we're dealing with here, Kev, is a combination of many things. Perhaps we're dealing with something that's very, very natural. But then depending on how you define natural, it's naturally occurring, but it's also synthetic or artificial in the sense that there is some man-made element to this where man has developed an understanding of this of a technology that can hijack these basic natural elements and then use it to trigger earthquakes and volcanoes. We know those types of things exist. A lot of people will say HARP, but there are more devices and more platforms than just the HARP facility that can do these kinds of things. I don't necessarily think that's what's causing the mysterious booms, but just on the subject of electromagnetism.
Yeah,
and
a lot of people come to me, and because I've talked about CERN a lot, Ryan, and the size of the magnets, 100,000 times the strength of the Earth's magnetic field that it can produce. They put two and two together and they say, Kev, come on, it's obvious, it's got to be CERN. But as I've said to Scott and some of the guys before, I kind of rule that out, because if that was the case, then anyone in Geneva sitting down to eat their dinner at night, they would end up with a fork in the eye. The cars would be kind of going off the road because of the magnetic pull of that machine. Planes would be falling out of the sky. So it's like HARP, CERN seems to get a lot of the blame for the stuff that's going on right now. But I certainly don't think CERN has got anything to do with what we're talking about here. And it's funny because you stole my next question, actually, Ryan. I was going to say to you, how much of this do you think may be down to man and his intervention with these machines? And I like the fact you highlight that HARP is just one of over 100 ionospheric heaters that we know about. So do you think it's maybe deliberate or a consequence of the fact that we've been playing about with the planet so much? Is it reacting?
It might be all of that and more. Recently we've seen stories that were published, mainstream news, CNN, where they finally acknowledged at universities like Harvard and Yale that they are going to begin a process, although we know that it's been going on for decades, if not half a century, a process by which to disperse aerosols, sulfates, and heavy metals into the stratosphere in particular. They say sulfur, they say things like heavy metals, things that can reflect sunlight. And a lot of these geoengineering stories that are very mainstream at the mainstream level in media, science, and also at the university level, they're saying that this actually could lead to the planet heating up. That's in their own writing. It's in mainstream news. So they say a consequence of trying to reduce the temperature could actually be and increase temperature, which makes me think this has been going on, and we know for a fact it's been going on for a long, long time. For whatever the purpose was initially, maybe it was an accident, this has caused there to be a real form of man-made global warming. And now that these programs become more and more obviously present, now it's being acknowledged, and they're saying in order to fix the problem that we didn't create, quote unquote, we did not create it, then we have to initiate a man-made program to fix it. But the solution to this problem is actually going to create the very problem. I mean, it says that. I have an article from CNN where it literally says it's going to make the planet hotter, but their goal is to make it cooler. So maybe from that point of view, whatever this is, you can call it a conspiracy, whatever that word might mean to you as a listener. I think if we have a look at this from an objective point of view, we're dealing with things that are intentional, that are man-made. We're dealing with things that are unintentional. They're still man-made. They're mistakes. I think a lot more mistakes than just intentional tampering. And we're dealing with things that are natural in the sense of solar activity. And that's something that in health, a lot of people don't discuss because the sun is very powerful. If we didn't have the UV light, we're told that sunlight's bad, we'll get cancer. But if we don't have enough UV light from the sun, what'll happen is our RNA can't communicate. Our cells will replicate out of control. We'll actually get a cancerous tumor. That's a scientific fact. That's a medical fact. Same thing with sunlight. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel happy. It makes us feel less depressed. The sun is a very powerful, powerful force. And if we write the sun off in things like health or in climate change, where all the sun doesn't have any ability to affect the climate, it's scientific egotism and egocentrism that masquerades as this higher intelligence and higher wisdom by trying to dismiss and actually dismissing and trying to overcome all natural systems and replace them with synthetic systems, which is a part of, I think, what I call the transhumanist transgender agenda, and trying to make a planet that is organic into some synthetic hybrid mechanical thing.
Yeah, so I think we've gone beyond geoengineering. And some time ago, I started to kind of say geoengineering stroke terraforming, because it's literally as if we are changing the entire planet. And it's not something that's conducive to us humans here, right?
No, and you know what? That's a really great point. Some people say, because I've used that word before too, some people have told me that's not really the appropriate word, but whether by definition or in theme of what you just said, Kev, terraforming, I think, is a part of this. And if you don't call it terraforming, it seems like the planet is being prepared for something else. It seems like with things like 5G and small cell, things like Wi-Fi, Google and Facebook wanting to beam it down from satellites and from drones to literally turn the planet into a microwave, which is part of the geoengineering programs, you put all of this together, and it does seem like the planet is being terraformed. If you don't like that word, it seems like the planet is being reshaped. I just simply say that it's like organic life is being overturned and creating, and something somewhere, some force, Google, Facebook, Amazon, all of those companies, Kurzweil and Elon Musk, they openly talk about this, replacing organic systems with synthetic systems. It's like the Borg from Star Trek, except it's real, and we're looking at the evidence in front of us.
The Borg from Star Trek, I like that because, you know, Scott, we talk about the D-Wave a lot, and we can go back to the infamous speech from Geordie Rose where he talks about, it gives us all the answers we're after, but then it gives us 10% extra resources. Now, nobody ever got to the bottom of what he actually was meaning there, and it's almost as if we're getting information from somewhere else that's leading us to create these changes that we're talking about here tonight. And I think if we want to use the Borg as just an example of what we're communicating with, it's some outside force, something unseen that is pushing us in this direction. I truly believe that.
You know, Kev, you mentioned earlier... Oh, I'm sorry, Scott, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, it's, you know, I've always said, you know, it's just like a combination of all of this of just everything, you know, like you said, Ryan. I mean, there's the sun, which actually, you know, is the main driver of weather on this planet, right? If we didn't have the sun, we would have no climate. We would have no seasons. You know, that is the main driver of weather on the planet. And so for scientists to like rule out the sun it is completely ridiculous. But it's a combination of all this, you know, frequency stuff going on. You know, we got 5G being rolled out. all this playing around they've done with the geoengineering, and are we in a point at a point now to where they've made the mistake and it's created a domino effect that they can't stop, and like you said, it was really interesting, you saying that in order to cool the planet down, there could be the chance that it could heat it up. I mean, it's crazy. But, going to this whole like terraforming thing and preparing the planet, it does seem like they're doing something like that, almost like they're preparing the planet for almost a new species or something like that. Something that is more, that could handle the atmosphere and the environment that they want to create. And right now, like, we can't handle it, but they want to shape us into something like that, right? And it's like you said, the whole transhumanist agenda and all of that. It's just really weird, and there does seem to be something going on with that. And I don't know. It's just it's really bizarre.
No, it is. On you go, Ryan.
Well, Kev, I was going to mention that you earlier had said something that you and I had talked about on the last show. I remember what that was. It was smart dust, and Clyde Lewis did a show on that same night. Remember?
Yeah, that's right.
So that smart dust comes into the conversation now, because on the theme of terraforming, I've done a couple of shows about this recently on the subject of smart dust, or at least that was a part of the shows that I've done. And when I've looked into this, I found mainstream UC Berkeley and just tech websites that have published stories about smart dust, or what they call neural dust. And if you have a look at what this is at the university level, it basically allows for these tiny little particles, that's why they call it dust, to connect to your nerves, the nerves in your body. It allows it to connect to organs in your body, and it feeds information in real time. This is just at the university level. Feeds information in real time from inside the body to a computer elsewhere. When you amplify that to the military application, I spoke to a scientist from Germany. Some of you might know him. His name is Harald Kautz. And he explained it in a much easier way than I would try to butcher it unintentionally here if I was to explain it. But he basically said that this is like creating an artificial form of consciousness, but doing so with the artificial intelligence through smart dust and through synthetic RNA, through synthetic DNA. People like Kurzweil have talked about having nanobots infused in everything, in trees and rocks. And so if we look at this as an organic system that's being replaced by a synthetic system, and as I talked to Harold, I had him on my show, The Secret Teachings, recently, and he talked about how this is a synthetic RNA. This system allows for the hijacking of our DNA, the hijacking of light, the hijacking of our bodies on all levels, and it allows for the creation of a synthetic shell, if you will, an artificial shell that will allow artificial intelligence connected through smart dust into the IoT, the Internet of Things, to inhabit. And in that sense, it's like every single person who is infested with this would be possessed, and this artificially intelligent, as Elon Musk called it, the demon, the summoning of a demon, AI, he said that, those are his words. This would literally be like transforming the planet into a synthetic, machine-like, biological computer system where everything is literally connected together and controlled by a few people who have their hands on the keys, and eventually that would mean some type of artificial intelligence that has control over everything. But it is like the quantum computer. It's like summoning something. It's like bringing information in from another world, another dimension. And you hear people like Peter Diamandis, who co-founded the Singularity University with Ray Kurzweil, where he just comes out and says, anybody who is going to be resisting the progress forward is going to be resisting evolution, and fundamentally they will die out. It's not a matter of whether it's good or bad. It's going to happen. Well, that kind of sounds like we are the Borg. Your biological and technological distinctness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile.
Absolutely. And Scott, I mean, remember what Geordie Rose said when he was criticizing Elon Musk and Freaky Friday? Remember he had our thumbnail on the screen and he was saying these lunatics are saying the demons are coming. It's not demons, but what's coming is something entirely alien, and it does not care one jot about human race at all. It's so much superior, it's so much more intelligent, and literally it will look at us like a human looks like an ant. And that was his words, and he was the one that's building the D-Wave, and he's talking about it being an alien AI.
Yeah, it's bizarre, man. And it makes me think of that game Half-Life when the Combine come through the portal, you know. But, you know, going back to the whole smart dust thing, you know, I brought up this article that the Guardian had written. I think it was the Guardian, and it said that pretty much everybody on the planet has magnetite, traces of magnetite in their brain. Yeah. And they tried to, you know, they tried to say it was because of pollution. But I don't think it, you know, I think that was the cover story for it. You know, magnetite is a magnetic, you know, magnetite, it reacts, you know, magnetic fields. And if everybody's got that in their brain, you know, what's really going on there? I mean, is it really magnetite, or is it this?
And then if you're fully immersed in a 5G system, which we're all about to be, then this really is, we're now starting to talk about this synthetic matrix, for lack of a better term, really taking shape. Now, we're almost on the break, guys. I can't believe this. 1 hour down, 1 hour to go already. But you've been speaking to Howard Vela, and of course, I'm going to have to ask you after the break then, Ryan, how on earth's name the black goo may fit into all of this, because this is also something you're writing about in your new book as well. And when it comes to an outside artificial intelligence source, I think we have to bring in the black goo. So join us after the break for more with Ryan Gable from thesecretteachings.info.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
There we go. We are back. We are live. Hour number 2 on a very special Kev Baker Show. I don't know how we keep on doing it. I really don't. And it's not me. It really isn't me, because it's the guests that I bring onto the show. It's the fact that they click so well with not just myself, but my good friend Scotty Lopez, and another good friend joining us now as well, because this is topics that really resonate with him. And resonate, they vibrate with him. Maybe that's, pardon the pun there. Jimmy Jeans, how you doing, man? This is really good stuff tonight. And of course, you and me, both very loyal fans of Clyde Lewis. And tonight's guest, Ryan Gable, I think is up there, maybe one of my top 3, top 2 guests that goes on Clyde. Anytime I see him on there, I'm tuned in, dude. And I know you're the same.
I am, you know, and let me tell you something. I think Ryan is the OG of esoterica, because some of the stuff that he gets into, and the way and the methodical way that he goes through the information to actually bring out the jewel.
Yeah, Ryan's more than just a host. I would call myself a host, but Ryan is host, researcher. We were learning earlier on in the show as well. I mean, he gets his feet on the ground, you know, investigates things, goes out there, talks to people about the stuff that he's talking about as well. And that's why, you know, the OG, certainly somebody very, very at the forefront of alternative media right now, doing some really great work, Jimmy. I agree with you there wholeheartedly, man.
Yeah, I just love it when he visits the Kev Baker Show, and I'm super happy to be here. I had a really great day, and I was drive testing.
Well, I need to ask, have you witnessed any of these booms firsthand, Jimmy? You spoke to anyone that's witnessed them?
No, not firsthand. One night I thought I did, but I mean, the thing about it is what is it when I start getting into these booms? A lot of times, what crosses my mind, because I don't know scientifically what creates thunder, what phenomenon happens that makes thunder happen, and then if you could figure that out, that may be something being enhanced by what's going on with the magnetic field. Like somehow there's two things that are bashing together that cause that sound to happen. I'm not really sure though. Maybe Scotty knows, because he is the Barry White of weather.
He certainly is the Barry White of weather. And I think now we can go back live to the man behind thesecretteachings.info. Ryan, you're back with us live. We're moving into hour number 2. And what a cliffhanger I left us on, because you had been mentioning you'd interviewed, is it Harold Klaus Vela, I think his full name is. And of course, he's really infamous for his work on the black goo. Well, we've been talking about this artificial intelligence that may be invading our environment right now as we're speaking. So I think it's, we have to bring in the black goo at this stage. How does that tie into all of this? Did Harold mention any of that?
Harold is more on the technical side of the research into things like black goo and 5G and transhumanism. But I did ask him what his opinion was on the black goo being so prevalent in movies and television shows and music videos. And he gave me his opinion on a show that we did about 2 weeks ago. It's on my website at www.thesecretteachings.info, along with my other comprehensive shows on the magnetic poles and the airports and the mysterious booms. I've done about a half a dozen of those. It's interesting if you were to look at black goo and you type that in on the internet, usually you don't find very much except for a couple of videos that are edited with Photoshop pictures, or you hear people make comments about something like black goo that have no relationship to the nature of what black goo is. Some people say that black goo is a literal thing, but there's a lot to play around with here, Kev and Jimmy and Scott, in relationship to symbolism and metaphor and even allegory in some of the stories that we see in television and movies and music videos. And I'll give you an example of that. We were talking before the break, or actually during break, and I mentioned the television show Stranger Things. And in the show Stranger Things, I know people say, well, it's just a TV show. Okay, well, but just stay with me for a moment. There's a scene in Stranger Things at the end of season 1 where they call this parasite. They call it the shadow monster, which is something that comes up in movies and TV shows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, over and over and over and over again. It comes up in music, especially in the music of people like Eminem, where he talks about being the Rain Man. That's something we find all throughout hip-hop. It's not just about making it rain in the club. It's about making it rain in the sense of bringing something down from the heavens. Something that protects us from that is an umbrella. We hear famous songs like Umbrella, and then the lines are repeated, Ella, 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 as if something is being summoned in a magical ritual. There's a lot more detail to that on other shows I've done and in my book, The Technological Elixir. But very quickly here, just moving through this, if you look at the umbrella and the Rain Man in music, all of that relates to the black goo as well, because the umbrella is, if you define it, it's about it's defined as creating a protective barrier. It's a shady region, a shade. Even Eminem, one of his personas is Slim Shady. And so if you link that, just for sake of this conversation, there are literally dozens of examples, but if you link that quickly to the shadow monster, they say in Stranger Things that this thing enslaves other dimensions, enslaves races of other dimensions by taking over their brains using its highly developed psionic powers. It wants to spread and take over other dimensions. It's kind of like an Independence Day. The locust aliens, they move from planet to planet, they consume every natural resource, and they move on. So we find these themes pop up over and over again. If you run through a couple of quick movies, you look at Monsters Incorporated, the Disney film, you've got these monsters coming into our world. They are scaring children. They're using the fear of children. They're using that to power their world. That's the power company in Monsters, Inc. And Stranger Things, it's the Department of Energy. So you follow this through, and you start to pick up these themes, like Slender Man, for example. That was turned into a movie. I know a lot of people say, well, it's just a movie. Okay, it is just a movie, but Slender Man wouldn't be a movie if it wasn't first made popular on the internet, if it wasn't made popular on social media. Slender Man is the epitome of what we're talking about here with transhumanism and with manifesting and perhaps conjuring and invoking things from other worlds, the quantum computer you mentioned, Kev, because if Slender Man was just a simple photograph, a simple meme on the internet, and it transitioned and it became a real physical living thing where two girls tried to kill a third girl for Slender Man, those girls were just sentenced recently. There was another story that didn't get much attention at the time because of the stabbing, where another girl wanted to stab her mother for Slender Man. That was in the news. We've had other reports that are Slender Man-like, including a report out of Florida where two girls, and all of these kids, by the way, are 11 or 12 years old across the board. The first girl, by the way, to die in the Momo Challenge, that was in Argentina, I believe it was. This girl was 12 years old. They're all 12 years old. So these two girls in Florida, they said they were going to kill all their classmates, drink their blood, eat their flesh, then commit suicide, which is important because it links to Bird Box, and they were going to do that for Satan. Now, you might think Satan, Slender Man, that's different. Satan's the devil, Slender Man's a character. But in Slender Man, you see this theme of evil manifesting in many forms, and that's what we're dealing with here, the manifestation of evil in many forms. In Stranger Things, it's the shadow monster, and a lot of music, it is the Rain Man, and we see in a lot of TV shows, it's black goo. It manifests in many different forms, and it affects us in many different ways. Some of us, it directly takes and possesses, like Slender Man. Some of us, it drives mad, and we go crazy. I know I tend to feel like that if I listen to the music of musicians like Katy Perry or Lady Gaga or That Poppy. Those musicians, I don't like the music. I hear it one time, and it literally repeats in my head until I've almost gone mad hearing a song one time. So if you start to look at these types of things and you consider that entertainment is the directing of attention, when we pay attention, we are paying with our energy. When we go to a movie, when we buy a Netflix subscription, Hulu, whatever it might be, even when we pay for the internet, we're looking at something online, we're paying with money. Money is currency. How do we get that currency? We have to expend some type of energy to acquire it at a job. So it all has to do with energy in that sense. We also hear things like art mimics life, life mimics art, right? Well, if you look at old occult alchemical texts as well, along with contemporary proverbs about things like this, art is a medium by which life can be manifested. And that takes us to things like spirit cooking using blood, which is the life force, semen, which is the life seed, and breast milk, which is a nurturing substance, to literally summon entities, to summon spirits, to feed those spirits, to give them life, and to bring them into our world. And I think that with an audience paying attention and paying with currency, they are entertained. Their energy is directed towards certain symbols, sigils, images, sounds, concepts. You hear about this with chaos magicians and sigils, that it communicates to the conscious and the subconscious. This contributes to the elevation of energy in movies and TV and music and videos and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in the entertainment industry, that assists in the ritual evoking the opening of a portal, or in a lot of cases, it's the mirror, like in the show Bandersnatch, an offshoot of Black Mirror. It was a smaller single episode. The mirror lets you move through other dimensions, other worlds. Alice in Wonderland is the most famous case of that. You also see this in The Matrix, where Neo wakes up by touching the mirror, and then they find his real body in the real world.
And Ryan, we're literally walking about now with a miniature black mirror in our hands, in our pockets. It's the first thing we look at, last thing we see before we go to sleep. And for me, that is some kind of scrying device.
Yes, sir, Kev. That is a great point. That is one of the more disturbing things that I recognized just in the last year. Yes, we all look at black mirrors every day. We're looking at our computer screens. We're looking at our phones, our tablets, our televisions. And that's exactly what it is. It's scrying. It's looking into a black mirror, and we're looking to have a question answered. We're looking for future information about future events. Usually it's a black obsidian mirror. That's the type of material, obsidian. And if you link just the word scrying, looking into a mirror, looking for answers to future events, what is it when you use a looking glass? You look into the distance, into the future. So through the looking glass, Alice in Wonderland, you can come right back around to things like the Queen of Hearts, the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland. Alice wears the red dress. You've got the red dress in Battlestar Galactica, the cyborg, the red dress in The Matrix, the woman in the red dress. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. I'll start to wind down here, and I'll pass it back to you, Kev. I don't want to ramble through the whole segment.
You can ramble on my show for 2 hours straight if you like, Ryan. I could listen to you all night, man.
I appreciate that. There's so much information within movies and TV, and it all relates together. I think, though, it's more than just some people that are interested in, well, let's put a woman in a red dress in this show. That'll be cool. No, it's happening because, like you said, with the quantum computer and some of this technology, there's something communicating through people like Kurzweil and people like Musk, something communicating through, let's say, the Duffer Brothers, or people that are responsible for writing or putting those images into movies and TV shows and music and videos. Like if you were looking at a singer named That Poppy, and you see her in one video called Time Is Up, where she's literally waking up as artificial intelligence, escaping from a computer, then uploading humans into the computer to kill them. And then there's a very similar video that just came out in the last couple of days from Katy Perry and Zed, where Katy Perry literally wakes up as a robot, and she goes on to, at the end of the video, try to kill a human being. So and they might say, well, it's a warning about technology. Okay, it can be a warning about technology, but why do we see the same themes where in that Katy Perry video, to link this back to Black Goo, she's wearing black leather or like a black latex more so with a red latex, the same type of outfit that Poppy, the singer, wears in her Am I a Girl, where in her album and her tour, where she basically sings in a red dress also, by the way, and she's singing about things like artificial intelligence and computers. That's the basis of her music. So if you link the red dress to the black latex and the red latex, the black goo, you see that in, judges, and you see the square hats of students when they graduate. All of that connects to the black goo. People like David Icke kind of popularized the research into things like that. Black goo specifically, though, when you look at it as just another form of manifestation of evil, and you see it in movies and TV, you see it in music, you see it in music videos. When we pay attention, Kev, when we look at entertainment, when we are entertained, when we pay for it with our own currency, art mimics life, life mimics art. Through art manifests life, and when we pay attention to it and direct our energy towards it, we are helping to manifest something, I think, bring it about into our world. We can look at that in the case of the quantum computer, or we can look at that in the case of things like the shadow monster from Stranger Things, the Rain Man. All of these, like Slender Man, Momo, they're just different names for the exact same thing. And while we go about thinking it's just a fun, exciting show, it's just a fun song, we're literally helping to manifest something that is oppressing everything that is organic, everything that is human.
Wow.
And I'll stop there. That's what I think.
Wow.
What do you think?
No, you made me think of when one of my favorite interviews I ever done, I think, way back at the start, because I'd watched so many hours of him, was Jordan Maxwell. And I always remember him saying to me, where attention goes, energy flows. And I think that really ties into the whole tulpamancy, the fact that we have manifested things like the Slender Man, Momo as well, and the fact that they put all of these programs, all of these symbols, the black goo, etc., in all of these movies. They know that people paying attention to that really does give it energy to the point where it can manifest. And I know, Jimmy, that you wanted to jump in here with a quick point as well, but I'm really liking the kind of road that we've gone down here. Starting to make a lot of sense now, Jimmy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, me too. I am loving this road. It's almost like the yellow brick road. It's like
the black goo road. It's the black brick road.
Well, I really like what you had to say about entertainment and paying attention, because when I hear the word entertainment, what immediately clicks into my mind is entrainment. And when I hear attention and paying attention, I hear inadvertent intention. And I think, in my personal opinion, that there's more magic going on with the media than just the blatant examples that we're aware of or the ones that are current. Because I think there's been magic is made. I think spells are cast electronically through the medium of moving pictures and sound. And from that point on, I mean, they've been doing that for a while. So I would say that, at this point, the etheric ability to transmute these signals or these ideas into people's heads and create intention on a mass scale, like black magic, electronic black magic is possible, I think, and I think that it's going on even as we speak today. What do you think, Kev? What do you guys think?
No, absolutely. I'm going to bring Scotty in here, because Scotty, I've been watching him when Ryan was talking. He's absolutely agreeing wholeheartedly, I think, with what Ryan's talking about. And we spoke about the Momo before, Scott. I think you introduced me to the creepy Momo kind of meme that was going around. What do you make of all of this, man?
Man, I mean, you see the black goo in so much stuff, in movies and all of that. I mean, in the chat there, I brought up Venom, right? The symbiote, the black goo basically takes over the dude, it's crazy. And, going to this whole thing of like intent and people putting energy into stuff, that's why you see all of this stuff happen during the Super Bowl, because they know millions and millions of people are watching all at the same time. They're all going to be focusing their attention on that stuff. And so, that's a very powerful point in time for them to be able to do something like that because they know that everybody's attention is focused on that one event, focused on everything. And I mean, you just look at the, the attacks on September 11th, right? Everybody's watching TV.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching the news. Everybody's focused on that one event. And it puts all that intent, all that energy into that.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely something to this. I mean, that's the whole reason they do this stuff. And I mean, even in movies, I mean, look, you have a big blockbuster movie come out. How many millions of people are all sitting in theaters all around the world when that movie releases, watching that movie at the exact same time?
And this is where it starts to get even stranger as well, because Ryan, you mentioned Stranger Things there. I've got a good friend, a guest that comes on, Jojo Seabacker, and her background, she's unable to talk about or watch the program Stranger Things because she was literally like the girl 11 in the show. She was in one of these programs at Montauk. And of course, the Duffer Brothers, that's what they wanted to base the original story on, was the Montauk Project. But we've got that show where we see this entity from another dimension coming and invading ours, for lack of a better term. And you've got absolutely millions upon millions and millions of people watching that and rewatching it again at home in their own time on Netflix. And then we can tie in another movie that you spoke about as well, which I do think ties into all of this, and it's Bird Box. Now, I wasn't overly taken by Bird Box at the first watching of it. Joe Joseph told me, you need to watch this. And Netflix were saying about 45 million people had watched this already after a couple of weeks. And there's something about Bird Box, and I can't put my finger on it. You've spoke about it with Clyde Lewis, and you had picked up on a lot of things that I had really missed in that. But I think, the fact that we are watching these big mega shows at home now, as opposed to having to go to the cinema, a once-off experience, we can watch them time after time after time, different times of the day, 24/7. There's people putting energy into these shows, into these movies. And I do think it's something magical going on here.
I agree with you, Kev. It is something magical going on. It's a kind of magic that most of us might not perceive to be magic because we have an idea that magic is like Harry Potter style magic, but it absolutely is magic. Will, intention, the willpower, which is, I think, one of the reasons the main character in Stranger Things is named Will. He even has to stand up to the parasite in the other world at one point, and he has to will it to go away, and he fails. Bird Box is interesting because Bird Box seems to be unrelated, but when you look at the details, it's actually directly related. It's just another example of what we're talking about. And I'll explain that by using the movie Lucy as an example. If you've ever seen Lucy, I think it was Scarlett Johansson. At the end of the movie, she starts to literally turn from a physical, organic form into a synthetic black goo. And she is connected to the internet. That's the smart dust. That's the AI. That's the synthetic environment that's being created for it that we talked about earlier. The black goo that Lucy turns into is just one of the manifestations of evil. When Clyde and I did a show on the Momo challenge last year, at the end of last year, we recognized during the show that Momo, of course, Momo is Chinese for devil, but that Momo is a manifestation of something else that we picked up. I've picked this up in Taylor Swift videos. I picked this up in the Powerpuff Girls, a TV show for kids in the 90s on the Cartoon Network in the United States. I've picked this up in Lady Gaga songs. They all refer to him, capital H-I-M, and him is his infernal majesty, the devil. One of the goals of the Momo game is to commit suicide to meet Momo. You kill yourself to meet the devil. That's what those two girls were planning in Florida that I mentioned earlier. That's what a lot of these girls are doing. They're mostly girls where they're trying to harm other people or they're trying to harm themselves to please Momo or to please Slender Man or to please the devil or to please Satan.
Is this why we're seeing a rise in self-harm? Because when I was a young guy, maybe it was going on and it just wasn't publicized, but I certainly don't think it was as prevalent as it is nowadays with youngsters.
No, and it might be like the booms where more people are aware of it, so we see more of it. But I agree with you. I think overall it's becoming more and more common that we see things like this when even 10, 15, 20 years ago, we didn't see things like that, especially 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't so prevalent. I think we are seeing more of it. And if you were to look at like Go back to Lucy for a moment. That black goo, it's kind of like tentacly, like venom. Scott, you mentioned venom. It's kind of like tentacly, right? That's how Slenderman is. He has tentacles. Well, that's also how it's kind of like the tentacles or the legs of
Stranger Things as well has the tentacles.
Exactly, like the spider legs. That creature has these spidery legs, these tentacles, and it's a parasite. It's like the face hugger from Alien, and then Alien, the xenomorph, this black, latexy looking, oily, black gooish like Alien. All of this, I think, relates together. There's also an obscure video game where this parasite takes over the head, just like the shadow monster in Stranger Things. And so when you relate this to Bird Box, there's a scene in Bird Box that really brought it home for me. I'm not going to have any spoilers here. I know people get upset about spoilers.
Oh, I do that as well.
Clyde got yelled at when we did that show because somebody thought he was spoiling the Bird Box movie.
Nobody could spoil that 2 hours of nonsense.
Do you remember there's a scene in Bird Box where this guy, I'm not going to give any other details, but this guy sits down and he actually sees what these monsters, what these demons, what these creatures look like.
Yeah.
He's kind of working for them. Well, they look tentacly. They look spider-like, just like the spider-like creature in Stranger Things, just like in Monsters, Inc. Mr. Waternoose is kind of like a crab-like parasite. And so we know that in Bird Box, when they take off the blindfold, when they look at these creatures that are otherwise invisible, the creature manifests as their fear. It manifests as an extremely traumatic emotional event. Slenderman, we know, manifests in many forms. That's what we heard in the movie. All of these different forms of evil, His Infernal Majesty, Lady Gaga said it doesn't matter if you love him or capital H-I-M. That's the name of the devil in an old kids' TV show called Powerpuff Girls. This character, this entity, this energy, this demon in all of its different forms, spread out like the tentacles of the parasite, like the black goo in Lucy, it manifests in so many different forms. And in Bird Box, when we take the blindfold off and we look directly at it, then we commit suicide. And that is the epitome of all of these internet challenges, the absurdity of Momo committing suicide or harming other people. It's all connected to Bird Box because Bird Box spawned all of these different challenges, and the challenges led people to literally driving with blindfolds on and doing things that can cause harm. It might be a less severe form of the Momo challenge, but it nevertheless is connected because Bird Box, we take off the blindfold and evil manifests.
Oh, Ryan Gable, ladies and gentlemen, what a star this guy is. Check him out at thesecretteachings.info. We'll be right back.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
I want to give a massive thank you to everyone tuning in today to the Kev Baker Show and Truth Frequency Radio Network, www.tfrlive.com. I've been joined by our good friend today, Ryan Gable from thesecretteachings.info. That's thesecretteachings.info. And Ryan, when can people hear your show and where can they hear your show?
Thanks, Kev. Listeners can hear my show 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday. The show begins at 12 midnight U.S. Pacific Time, 3 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. It airs on the Fringe FM. That's the Fringe, Fringe.fm. You can find links to places to listen like the Paranormal Radio app, TuneIn, TalkStream Live. Or you can find a link also on my website where you can find my massive show archive going on about 8 or 9 years of radio now. All of the shows, great guests, and timeless subjects. I don't do many commercials on my show, so it's usually a lot of content, a lot of information jam-packed. It's all at www.thesecretteachings.info, and my email is rdgable, rdgable @yahoo.com.
You're going to come back next month, Ryan. I think we need to start doing a regular show, dude, because this is, I would love that. We can talk about that off air, but I'd certainly love to work more with you, man, for sure. And if you ever find yourself getting censored again, like I know you have in the past, because some networks, they just don't like the truth. They don't like you going where the truth leads you. Please, 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 just you head on over to TFR, where we censor nothing over here. So there's always going to be a home for your radio show, no matter what happens, Ryan, okay? I promise you that, man, because this is brilliant stuff. And I'll certainly be taking the podcast of you and Mr. Vela to bed tonight to listen to his latest stuff on what you were talking about there. I like that he gets into the technical side of things. That really plays into my geeky side. So yeah, please, folks, I urge you all check out the website. It's absolutely brilliant, and Ryan's doing some really great work. Now, let me come quickly to you, Scott, because you were going to get in towards the end of the last segment there, but we were all caught up listening and talking over the Bird Box and everything else. So where do you want to take this now, Scotty?
Well, I was just thinking, when Ryan brought up, the Powerpuff Girls and him, I mean, I grew up in the 90s, watching Cartoon Network and all that stuff. And I remember all that, and, him, he was a really weird character, for a cartoon like that. First of all, he was like, he was the devil basically, but not only that, he was like this transgender, like gender bending character. He wore fishnets and he had a real like effeminate voice, and it was like, he was a transgender character in that show. And I just, this is part of that whole kind of agenda of normalizing it, and having kids watch that. I just, it was just an observation I made, looking back in hindsight. And then, we talk about these girls being real sensitive to this kind of stuff, the Slender Man killings and all that. It makes me think about how, it just seems like all throughout time, it's women that are really in tune with the spiritual side of things that are opened up to stuff like that. I mean, you can even go all the way back to the times of ancient Greece with the oracles. It always had to be a young girl or a young woman, that was used as an oracle to look into the future and to, do stuff like that. And so it does seem like, young women are open to this kind of stuff.
Same as poltergeist activity, yeah. Scott. It's like I usually say to Bill Bean, it's almost as if there's an adolescent female in the house, it can multiply the activity going on there. There's something about that energy. So I definitely agree with you there. And you were mentioning the fact that it's almost like a transgender, cross-dressing type character. And I'll come back to you now, Ryan, because isn't the Baphomet, isn't that like a hermaphrodite type figure? It's got the breasts, and it's obviously got man parts as well. So it's this kind of merging, or this transhumanist kind of approach to things, right?
You saying that makes me want to do an entire show on that subject now, because I don't see Baphomet as a negative thing. Baphomet is a combination of male and female in a hermaphroditic alchemical sense, which is a positive merging of male and female to produce a third in the sacred trinity. The types of transgender promotion that we have today, in terms of what Scott said with this, and it was a great description, that character makes me feel so weird even to this day. It was creepy, that echoey voice that him had in the Powerpuff Girls. He was like this transgender fishnet wearing devil character, and that kind of transgenderism is promoting not if you are transgender, but people that are using a very small percentage of the population to promote transgenderism. They're exploiting those people. That is a form of depravity. And that actually goes back to the 1920s, the Institute for Sexual Sciences in Berlin, a Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, where they performed the first male-to-female surgery that was later reversed. And that was a form of depravity and degeneracy that was promoted during the Weimar Republic and pushed onto the German people. It was very communist and socialist in nature. So I think in terms of Baphomet, you have a separation there. Baphomet is a promotion of the positive and negative elements that are equally combined together to create a third. That's positive. The opposite of that is when you have a separation of the two and then creating these weird, bizarre characters of people that are half man, half woman. That's a distortion. That's like creating a hellish environment where people can't even procreate, and the human race would die out if it wasn't for the scientists from A Brave New World to have babies genetically engineered in a laboratory.
Maybe that's the kind of being that they suspect or would like to promote for the terraformed planet that we were talking about earlier on. I mean, we're moving towards almost human 2.0, if we're even still human anymore at that point.
Oh, yes, exactly. And that's what it connects to, because if you look at, I call it the transhuman, transgender, transgenic, or something like that agenda, because transgenders make up like 0.7% of the population. And if you're transgender, I have nothing against you. The point is, why is there such a movement, billions of dollars, attention in media, attention in entertainment being directed towards and for 0.7% of the population? That seems very bizarre. It's one group of people that are human beings too, just like you and I, that are being exploited for some form of political, technological agenda to create this attitude that since machines, it's subtle, but it's there, machines are non-biological. They don't have the biological sexes. And so we see things like we're not really allowed to say she or him or her or he anymore because that's considered offensive. But then you recognize, Kev and Jimmy and Scott, we can 100% with no issue call the Hanson Robotics Sophia robot. We can call her a her. We can call her a she. So we can call the robot a girl, but we can't call a human, a biological female, a girl, because that's considered offensive. And that's the separation between the two.
I had not thought of that before. That's a really, really good observation. I'd never put that together before. And Jimmy, I know you want to jump in here on this topic as well.
I did. You know, there's a little bit of social engineering that's going on here too.
A little bit, a big bit.
Yeah, a big bit. Because population growth is a big concern, and so everything that they can do to eliminate, the propagation of the human race, they're trying to do. And so they've slowly morphed women into men and men into women from a social perspective. In other words, men act a little bit more effeminate now than they did in the past. And so now it's okay to be because it's okay to be gay, it's also okay to be bisexual. And because it's okay to be bisexual right now, I mean, really the only thing is these transgender, studies that they have out here, and they put these figures forward in the media and in pornography. And so what happens is the male population starts to not understand the differentiation between the female and the male as far as sexually. They're the same, because with the type of sexual deviance that there is in the world, a lot of what goes on with this type of sexual situation is slowly taking men and having men want men and women want women. Yeah. That's what I think anyway.
No, there's a lot of social engineering at work here. And like Ryan said, they're 0.7 of the population. And Ryan, I'm like you, we have to almost preface any talk about the trans topic by pointing out the obvious, that we're not having a go at people that have chosen this as their lifestyle. It's not about that. It's the fact that there is a deliberate, obvious agenda here. And what I mean is, if you were a Martian and turned up here and looked at the media before you got here, you'd expect to be tripping over trans people in the street. Every second person, you'd be thinking somebody that's trans this, trans that. But in reality, that is not the experience. I certainly don't experience that here. Most of the people I've spoke to, they've never come across half of the issues that people are getting so upset about in the media, because in reality, they do not even exist.
That's right. It's an artificial reality, and we see that on a psychological level. I know a lot of people are waiting eagerly. Other people are fearful about connecting themselves with computers, the 2030, 2045, 2050 singularity. I think we've reached many singularities and surpassed them. They're just talking about the singularity of uploading consciousness, which I don't think that you can do. It's a big Trojan horse. But we've already done that. We've already uploaded ourselves into computers. It's like when you let something download off the computer and you go in the other room and do something, you come back. All these tech companies just clicked upload and they walked out of the room. And while they walked out of the room, we do all the work for them. We upload all of our information to the internet, to the cloud, to their system. We're already uploading ourselves to the computer. It's not something they have to put electrodes on your head to do. But it's really important, if we go back to Bird Box, Kev, Clyde Lewis and I talked about this on Ground Zero, and I think that, and when I said it, Clyde kind of adopted the saying. I said we have to wear what I call the blindfold of discernment, because in the movie Bird Box, when you take off the blindfold, you see evil manifest. It manifests as a fear. It's an evil manifestation, a demon. It's him, tentacles, Slender Man, Momo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all the same thing. Momo is the devil. This unseen force has a lot of different names, and it represents fear, it represents death, it represents destruction, it represents evil in all of its different forms. So in the movie, when you remove the blindfold, you're driven to commit suicide. When we watch Bird Box, we're driven to fascination and dangerous challenges. So in that case, in real life, when we watch it, we've removed the blindfold of discernment, and then we go do dangerous things like commit suicide, just like the movie. So if we were to don the blindfold of discernment when we watch popular entertainment, when we pay attention to news and to media, then we won't blindly accept it as much. We can consider the subconscious influences that are present in the movies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, where this unseen force uses these platforms as a vehicle to manifest through our energy, our paying attention, our paying with currency. So we must wear the blindfold of discernment, conscious awareness, so that we are not taken by the fascination and bound to harmful challenges or thoughts, including suicide. We then can navigate the darkness with our other senses, with the blindfold of discernment.
I love it. The blindfold of discernment. I'll certainly be adopting that phraseology as well. It really is apt for the times we're living in. And I want to move on to another show that we've both watched, another really interesting kind of new genre of TV show, and this comes from Black Mirror. It's a spin-off called Bandersnatch. Now, this is a highly interactive experience, and I've certainly been blown away by it. And I was saying to you, Ryan, that in Bandersnatch, we're not going to give anything away, no spoilers, but literally you make decisions in the movie for the central character. And the central character, even at one point, is talking about how there's somebody controlling them from the future via Netflix. And I was saying to you, it's almost like when we were talking about this outside force, this interdimensional force that may be controlling and steering humanity today. And I think there are parallels between what we see in Bandersnatch and this, all of what we've been talking about tonight. This interdimensional unseen force that takes many shapes or forms, and it's literally steering humanity.
Yes, very much so. That episode of Black Mirror, this spin-off, separate, individual, single episode, literally does combine everything we've discussed tonight. One of the themes in that movie was Pac-Man, P-A-C-Man, the program and control man. Pac-Man is program and control. He consumes, and then when he thinks he's out of the maze, he gets put right back into the maze. He gets put right back into the labyrinth. And these ghosts that are chasing him, they might just be his own fears, his own imagination, but it's all within the system. So whether it's Pac-Man or the whole episode of Bandersnatch, there's a lot of connection intentionally by the writers, I think, with the mirror from Alice in Wonderland, the mirror from The Matrix. The little boy, the main character, Stefan, has a little white rabbit, just like the white rabbit that Alice follows, just like the white rabbit that Neo is told to follow in The Matrix. And one scene, the kind of a famous scene, even if you haven't seen the whole movie, is when this one kid at the company that the main character works at, he sets this kid down and he tries to explain reality to them. And he offers the kid a hit of acid. And it's just like Neo sitting in front of Morpheus offering him the red pill or the blue pill. He offers him the acid and says, do you want to take this experience? Do you want to learn about the nature of reality? Where he goes on to tell him that mirrors let you move through time. So you have Black Mirror, you have Alice in Wonderland. In Bandersnatch, the kid goes through the mirror. You have connections to Alice in Wonderland because this character who explains the nature of reality, his girlfriend is literally, her makeup and her hair is done so that she looks like the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland. Yes. So you have all of those connections. Those are just the on the surface, the images, the visuals. But as you said, this Bandersnatch is kind of a new form of entertainment. It's interactive. The first time I ever saw this was when I was a kid. There's a video game called Heavy Rain for the PlayStation 3, where you made interactive decisions throughout the game, and it was kind of like watching a movie unfold.
Great game.
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the first ones I remember. Bandersnatch just brought back that memory. If you define Bandersnatch, bander as in Band-Aid means to bind. Snatch means to grab or to seize. So it's literally a binding seize. That's what Bandersnatch means. It's an interactive program with free choice, at least you think it's free choice, to decide what happens next. But all of the pathways, which is a theme in the movie, all of the pathways and what you watch are already mapped out. It's all a code, and you can hear the numbers, they say in the show. It's metaphoric for life. Our free will allows us to make our own decisions, it seems, but we all interact within this life, within this TV show, and all of the decisions that we make ultimately are predetermined by fate. But our destiny, something that we call some form of fate or some type of future destination where we will end up, is just something that will occur. We will die, but how will we die? It's a matter of how we will get there. That's debatable, but we will die in some way, shape, or form. So there are multiple different outcomes of how we can get to the end, but nevertheless, we will reach the end. So if you look at what Netflix did with this show, they're accumulating and storing all of this data, not just on their regular users, but specifically for this show, on your decisions, what you decided to do with certain characters, to commit violent acts or to abstain from those violent acts. But the point is that you get nudged in a certain direction regardless of what decision that you ultimately make. And so because of that, as Netflix maps human decision-making with 137.1 million subscribers, and then specifically testing out something like Bandersnatch, the algorithms in the computer decide what kind of content we see next.
And this is what I was saying to you. I mean, used to be I was fed on sci-fi and all the geeky documentaries out there, but I noticed that after watching Bandersnatch, that it had all changed. Things that I would have had in my recommendations were pushed further down. There was a lot more, how would I put it, action-type movies. You could say violence, you could say killing in there. So definitely the choices I made from an individual level, watching Bandersnatch, I watched it playing out in real time with what Netflix must have learned from my decision-making.
Your decision.
It takes it to a whole new creepy level. I mean, the interactive TV show, that's one thing. But the fact that it's learning from your decisions at the same time, it takes it to a whole new level, Ryan.
Yes, it's a self-organizing collective intelligence, and it's part of the quantum subject. It's part of quantum computers. It's part of AI and machine learning. And I noticed something that's kind of disturbing, and I think I could probably slow down and leave it here for you, Kev, in the last couple of minutes, wherever you want to go with it. The algorithms that decide what we do next, that's like the artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Because the AI voice assistants, which were created by DARPA and the DoD, admittedly, they didn't just spend billions of dollars and get people together to make an assistant for your phone that helps you find out what the weather is without going outside. They did it to do other things. So the algorithms are kind of like the AI. And it becomes the user, because we, in Bandersnatch, we tell the character what to do, but it's all predetermined. We think we have a choice, but we really don't, is the theme. In real life, though, it's actually us. We're being talked to by the artificially intelligent voice assistants. We're being prompted by Netflix of what to watch next. So the AI becomes the user, and we become the game in the virtual world. And that's the replacement of the organic world with the synthetic world, and the bringing in of this summoning demon that Elon Musk said, the summoning of a demon, or the bringing in of this artificial and synthetic consciousness.
Absolutely, and that takes us to what we were covering the other night on the show, something called Mirror World. Now, Mirror World is basically a augmented/virtual reality that has been stitched together right now as we speak, and it will eventually result in, putting on the glasses, maybe looking through the camera on our phone. It's all going to be individually tailored kind of advertisements in the street. You're going to see deals flying out from shops. There'll be hovering clocks. You name it, there's going to be all sorts of things. It's literally going to be like in a virtual reality without putting the goggles on. It's a virtual reality that will overlay our own real world. The 3D world mapped over with this augmented reality. And Scott, I can see you sitting there nodding away, because this is the stuff that we look into normality anyway. And it's almost as if this terraforming that we were talking about earlier on has been a big part of where we're moving into now. And it seems really cool, really geeky, really kind of for our convenience, knowing that there's a certain sale on for you, and it'll all be tailored like our internet experience. But there's something bigger going on here, and the advantages that we get from this crazy little augmented reality, I think that's just a small portion of the bigger picture, because I still think we're preparing this reality for something that doesn't belong here, something that comes from outside, and something that has literally prompted us to go down this technological path that we're on now, Scott.
Definitely. And I have to concur with everything that Ryan just said. It's the, all of this information that we're giving our smart devices, our Google Homes or Amazon Alexas, all that stuff. That's all data. It's all data sets being fed into an artificial intelligence. And the more it sucks in, the more information it gets, the more it learns about us. And then the more it's going to prompt us to do things. Remember, there was that video that was supposedly, it was supposedly leaked out from Google. Remember, what was it? The selfish ledger?
That's the one, Scott.
And wasn't that the whole premise of that whole thing? Was that eventually it would start nudging people to make decisions in order for it to achieve a goal? And so I think we are reaching a point to where the AI is playing us. We think we're in control of it all, but really we're just being manipulated. We're being nudged in directions it wants to take us in.
And remember, Scott, the more data that we feed an AI, the better it gets, but it also becomes predictive. It learns to the point that it knows in advance just what we're going to do. So literally, it's ahead of us. It knows exactly what actions we're going to take because we've told it enough about ourselves already. Exactly.
That's exactly what happened, what's going on. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a crazy situation and definitely a wild time to be alive, because I don't think there's ever been a time where we've seen things as wild as they are now, man.
No, absolutely not. The Chinese, that old proverb, Ryan, may you live in interesting times. I think we've gone beyond that. We've gone beyond the interesting into the absolutely bizarre.
Yes, we have. And we are looking at a world in which, right before our very eyes, we're literally being conditioned to accept an artificial and virtual version of reality, and to think that it's just fun, it's convenient. The big things that I talk about, the four things, are convenience, luxury, safety, and security. All things that if you were to be arrested, generally speaking, and taken to a jail, you were to be tried and put into a prison, you'd probably get a little bit of luxury there. Some prisons are kind of luxurious from what I hear.
Over in the UK, they're like a holiday camp, dude.
See, there you go. You got the luxury. You got the convenience of somebody bringing you your food. You've got the safety of the walls and the security guards. You've got the security. You're in a prison, but, it's fun. That's what I think is happening here. We are being told that we'll be superhuman, but these superhuman abilities are actually taking the life and they're taking the humanity out of us. We're becoming subhuman. We're not even human anymore when we attach ourselves to these things and we allow these parasites to attach themselves to us, be it literally or symbolically. And so what I personally think is to be as aware of this as possible, to wear the blindfold of discernment, as we said, like Bird Box, and to be aware that these influences are there. And whatever you do, you might think it's too overwhelming, I can't do anything. Okay, do what you can, and don't just lay down and lick the boots of this system.
What a show. What a show. And special thanks to Ryan Gable from thesecretteachings.info. Check him out, folks. If you like this, you're going to love his podcast.